Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News, the summer series. Some highlights and best ofs from the last, I guess it's 12 to 14 months, 12 months, last from 2023 mostly, and some clips for you guys to enjoy while we're taking a bit of a break. So the best of summer series has a selection of conversations each night, Monday to Thursday this week, and then Monday to Thursday next week, and then we're back into it on the 22nd of January. That's the plan at the time of recording this message. So thanks so much for being with you. Tonight we're going to have a look at our show favourite, Chantelle Baker, making sort of misleading and exaggerations, and I think they're called lies, about some claims that she's made, and we spent a good bit of time debunking those. Actually, it's quite a good long piece, but you'll enjoy it. I'm sure you will. Also, National wants to take your retirement money and give it to landlords. This is a pre-election conversation talking about what they were planning on doing, what they'll end up doing. I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see, but that's part of the conversation tonight. And also some US news, looking at Tucker Carlson. And whilst a lot of people look at the numbers that Tucker Carlson's getting on his Twitter show, and they look very big, they're actually crashing. They're a massively lower number of people watching his show than there was at the start. Yes, it's still a big number compared to many, but if you have a look at how many viewers he's lost, it would be a concern for any media group. So Tucker Carlson's numbers, we'll have a bit of a chat about that tonight as well. I hope you're having a good break. Hope you're safe. Hope you're dry. Hope you're well. Hope you're hugging a loved one often. Let's rip into tonight's episode of the summer series here on Big Hairy News. There's this conversation about Tucker on Twitter. And we're finding out in the last 24 hours that Tucker Carlson's numbers are cratering on Twitter. Now, I know coming from people who get literally hundreds of views an episode, talking about millions of views is ridiculous. But compared to where he has been, and this is Matt Binder. Matt Binder, I think, works with Sam Cedar. Am I right with that? Part of the Sam Cedar crew, Emma Vigeland crew. And he has put out an announcement to the numbers. These are the video view stats, remembering that each video needs to be played at least for 2 seconds. Episode 1 was 27 million, episode 2 14 million, episode 3 22 million, episode 4 10 million, episode 5 6.5 million, episode 6 8.5 million, episode 7 5.5 million, episode 8 nearly 4 million. Matthew Gertz, who is a senior fellow at the MMFA, not the GOP congressman, find that person there. Anyway, he has also said views for Tucker Carlson on Twitter posts assume the number of people who actually viewed the videos is much lower. There's apparently a new algorithm that Elon has brought in, and if it scrolls through past you, it can get counted as a view. I think he did that just before Matt Walsh put up his documentary to get those 200 million views. But look, I'm not being bitter. I will still say no matter what, you will see... they're still big numbers. Like even if 120 million for Tucker was only 20 million people watching, that's still, the biggest CNN show has 1 million, so it's still humongous. But the point I guess that these guys are making is look what's happening to the numbers. This is from Matt Gertz, 120 million episode 1, 60 million, so in half episode 2. After Trump was indicted, it jumped up to 104 million. Then it went down to 32 million, 17 million, up to 32 million, down to 15 million, down to 8.6 million. So it's currently sitting around 4 to 5% of its opening episode. Say 5% would be a good, and there is the Tucker Carlson Twitter views, the trend on Twitter. So I don't know. I'm not going to read too much into the idea of Elon Musk and Carlson, but maybe hitching his boat to Elon might not have been a good thing in the long run. And it also means maybe, and this is not necessarily my original thought, I was thinking this, but I've heard others say it, in case you've seen, like, people are talking about Kyle Kalinske. I didn't see what Kyle Kalinske said today, but I have seen what others have said. And others are also saying that maybe this just shows the strength of that time slot on Fox News as opposed to the strength of Tucker Carlson. I remember when Paul Holmes went to Prime TV. Paul Holmes was the biggest thing in New Zealand television and radio, and he went to Prime TV for $1 million. And his numbers cratered. And it was because he was the biggest thing on New Zealand TV, because 7 p.m. on TV1 was the biggest thing on New Zealand TV. And that's why. Not to take anything away from Paul Holmes, he was an absolute legend, without question. But the time slot was the thing that gave him the numbers more so than he himself, which was proven when he went to Prime. And maybe what this is showing is the time slot, I think it's 8 p.m. on Fox, is more so the star of this episode than perhaps Tucker Carlson was. When Bill
Yeah,
O'Reilly
absolutely.
left, they thought this is the end of it. Tucker Carlson got bigger numbers. Whoever's going to be the next person in there, don't know, they may not get bigger numbers than Tucker Carlson, but they'll get plenty good numbers because, old people don't know how to change their skyboxes. Like, that's literally a part of it. They don't know how to change the channel.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, all I can say is it's delicious to see. You hate it. Hate to see it, right?
Oh, it's terrible. I hate to see it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm real sorry for the guy.
Hint of sarcasm there, Chewy, just quietly.
Just a smooch. And I know people have had problems with our sarcasm on Twitter today, but yes, that is sarcasm. I wish Tucker Carlson to kindly remove himself and add himself to the sea.
It is funny, not a bit of attention here talking about sarcasm on Twitter today. The tweet that I put up yesterday that we were talking about with that road sign, it is hilarious to see the number of people who are calling me racist and saying that old white stale men, having problems with this. They can't see. And then what's even funnier is the people responding to those people going, how stupid you must be not to see that this is irony here. But yeah, sarcasm and irony. It's very, very funny. Very, very funny. There's more on Tucker Carlson. I've got actually two other stories to tie into him today because it hasn't been necessarily a good day for Tucker Carlson. Here's the next one. Ray Epps sues Fox News for Capitol Riot conspiracy claim. How's this for a convergence of absolute revolting people? So Ray Epps was one of the guys who was at the January 6th insurrection. One of the bad guys, to be honest. But Fox News and other sources have been claiming that he is like a plant. He is one of these. He's FBI, and and so what he's doing is he's now suing Fox News for the claims they made about him to do with him being basically a psyop. A former US
There's always a false flag.
A former US Marine who became the focus of right-wing conspiracies surrounding the Capitol riot is suing Fox News for defamation. The legal action accuses Fox of telling a, quote, fantastical story, end quote, suggesting Ray Epps was a federal agent to make him a scapegoat for the raid on Congress. Mr. Epps was filmed encouraging people to enter the Capitol complex in January 2021, but he was not charged. The lawsuit filed in court in Delaware on Wednesday does not specify damages. It also names Tucker Carlson, who was taken off air by the network earlier this year. Mr. Epps' lawyer says the client and his wife had to close their wedding venue business in Arizona and move to a small motorhome in Utah because of the threats and harassment they endured as a result of the conspiracy theories. It couldn't happen to a nicer guy. In a statement, Mr. Epps' lawyer, Michael Teta, said the lawsuit, quote, marks another moment of accountability. For years, Fox News and Mr. Carlson created and amplified conspiracy theories about Ray that lacked any foundation. In fact, Mr. Teta said, they have endured significant emotional and psychological harm from the attacks, the attorney added. It is the latest legal action against Fox News, which settled a lawsuit by voting machine company Dominion for $787 million. In April, Fox also faced a $2.7 billion defamation lawsuit filed by another election technology company, Smartmatic, which accuses the channel of broadcasting lies that decimated its business. Carl Tobias, a law professor at University of Richmond in Virginia, told the BBC the volume of evidence that emerged during the Dominion case was vastly larger than what has so far appeared in Mr. Epps' lawsuit. But the allegations in the complaint, if proved, might expose Tucker Carlson and Fox to some liability, Mr. Tobias added. He also said the difficult part for Mr. Epps will be to prove that someone there was actual malice in the reporting and that they were engaged in serious misconduct and neglecting to do what should have been done by way of fact checking. So not so good day again for Mr. Carlson and for Fox News, Chewy.
It's really upsetting that when you do it just even a touch, a little bit of it, an insurrection, that there are in fact consequences. I mean, I'd be personally thankful that you didn't end up in jail, that you're just in a trailer in the desert somewhere, like with all the other crazy people. They could build a community.
Yes.
You've been zapped to the nether realm again.
Yes, I have. I'm still here, but I'm not sure what's happening with my camera. It did this last night as well, so I can't actually touch or control everything, Sherry. So maybe there's some chats you could get to while I'm doing this.
Yeah, Arrest JK says, when you're shocked that the leopard face eaters eat your face.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true. Yeah. I'm always stunned with this from the insurrectionists, is that they're kind of like, oh no, Like it was just a prank, bro. I didn't expect to lose my job or have federal law enforcement come after me. You know, all I did was kick in the doors of the Capitol and just roam around like a nut bar for a while.
And threatened to kill Mike Pence.
Surely that's covered under my First Amendment rights, is it not?
Yeah. Let's have a look at one more thing with Tucker Carlson, just because we're going balls deep in Tucker today, which kind of sounds wrong when I say it.
Don't like that phrase.
Not at all. So Oliver Darcy is a
bad.
senior media reporter at CNN. Tucker Carlson on his latest show had a chat with Andrew Tate. Oliver Darcy on Threads, this is the first time we reference Threads on the show, has released a conversation he had with Tucker Carlson. So here's what Tucker Carlson told Oliver Darcy when I asked him about his softball interview with Andrew Tate. Tucker and Tate, Twitter vlogger, that's what he calls him now, a Twitter vlogger, that's hilarious. Tucker Carlson is standing by his decision to lie about the charges that fellow right-wing extremist vlogger Andrew Tate faces in Romania during the latest episode of his show to Tuesday. Carlson interviewed Tate at length. The episode is 2.5 hours, allowing the misogynist online personality to brazenly mislead his audience about the crimes he is accused of. At one point during the chat, Carlson went as far as to declare that Tate was, quote, not accused of a sex crime, end quote, and, quote, not actually accused of rape, end quote. But that's simply not true. Tate has been indicted on human trafficking and rape charges by authorities in Romania. When I pointed this out to Carlson via text on Tuesday evening, so text means a direct phone number, that's how I would read that. He didn't say tweet, he said text. So he's texting Tucker Carlson. Yeah. When I pointed this out to Carlson via text on Tuesday evening, the former Fox News host asked me if I'd ever seen the charges and knew who Tate was accused of raping. Okay, so Tate's been accused of rape, and Tucker Carlson's gone, well, have you seen the charges and do you know who he raped? That's the response. There's more though, Chewy. I told him I'd seen the press release announcing the charges, to which Carlson claimed that I had, quote, zero facts, end quote, and added, quote, a Romanian press release is enough for you? That's journalism? You can just picture that face, that Tucker Carlson face, that side tilty, squinty thing. It's worth noting here that Carlson has made wild assertions based on far flimsier material. I asked Carlson whether he seriously believed it was journalistically wise to ignore what authorities are publicly saying, to which Carlson answered, quote, if you think a government press release is all you need for a story, you ought to be in another business, end quote. I told Carlson I believe everyone is innocent until proven guilty, but that it was strange that he did not push back against Tate. Why not note what the authorities have publicly said? Carlson replied, I don't take anyone's word for anything, but accusing someone of a sex crime without naming the supposed victim is libel and it's immoral. But you don't care because you dislike his politics. You are not a journalist. You're a liar.
What the hell?
You're not my friend. So according to Tucker Carlson, accusing someone of a sex crime without naming the supposed victim is libel and it's immoral. So therefore, right, let's just get this straight. A father who commits a pedophilic act on his child, you have to release the name of the father and the child, or else, because that's a sex act. It's the worst sex act, but it's a sex act, or else Tucker Carlson's saying that's libel and it's immoral. What is he smoking? Hey, got a team. Welcome back. I hope you're enjoying the summer session. I'm getting them so confused every time. I'm not sure which is which. I just wanted to let you know as well that we do have our merch store still running during this summer period. What we have available at the time of recording is Beardy Boy caps and Beardy Boy t-shirts. The black on black is very sleek. Of course, the blue on yellow is because Otago color has got to be. And we had a spare BHN hoodie, which is now sold out. So there's no BHN specific product to sell during this. But what we are going to do is, if you enjoy what we do and you want to support us and you want to have a bit of this sort of a gear, what we are offering is a 25% off any of that stuff that's left over whilst we are broadcasting these best of shows. So 25% off anything. All you got to do is head to bhnshop.nz and at the checkout use the promo code SUMMER. The promo code SUMMER to give yourself 25% off any of that merch that is in there. Thank you for those who have bought already. You probably, if you haven't received your product yet from Summer, you probably will be getting it soon, because I did some sending out in the week of the 8th of January. If you're going to order tonight, then you can expect to have your stuff within a week or so, because I'll keep on top of it. bhnshop.nz if you want to support what we're doing. That is Big Hairy News, the shop. And of course, coming back in 2024, there will be more product on that shop, more merch to get like we did last year, which you guys loved to bits, and we loved you to bits for doing it. bhnshop.nz. All right, team, we're going to keep trucking right now with another story for you in the BHN Summer Series or Summer Sessions, whichever you prefer, here on BHN. It's Big Hairy News. Let's start off by showing you, for example, what happens when Chantelle Baker gets debunked by her own producer in real time and then moves the goalposts. All right? Debunked in real time and then move the goalposts. The thing that you need to be really aware of is how certain she is that the IPCA only looked at the final day of the protest, right? That's the start. The first half of it, she's talking about how they only looked at the final day. She then gets debunked by her own producer. She then shifts the goalpost. Now, this is a tactic that we've seen before from Chantelle, and I'll show you that shortly. So let's have a listen to it. And you're probably going to hear information you don't want to hear, but bear with us, right? Bear with us.
They're actually really only looking at footage and photos of the last day. So the parliamentary CCTV footage, they never requested that in time. The police didn't request it from Parliament in time, so it was overwritten. So they actually never looked at any of the footage of the protest during that time frame, during the full 22 days. They only looked at it on the last day, the 23rd. So if you're looking at it objectively, and as we all believe, there were some people there that seems like they just popped up on the day because they wanted a bit of a scrap with police, and they weren't necessarily people that actually cared about the mandates. They just were there for their own reasons. If you just look at that very last day in that perspective, then this IPCA report probably makes more sense. And if you also look at the fact that they took out any instance of assault against the protesters, and they claim that those are in their own independent investigations. So if you take out any...
That's actually factually incorrect as well, because the report does talk about what the police did wrong, and there were some things under question. But it does also say that there are ongoing investigations. They seem to be angry that all the investigations haven't been wrapped up in one report. It definitely does say there are ongoing investigations into 8 incidences.
Instances where the police acted aggressively, and then you also take into account this, they only looked at the final day, then that's the context of this report.
I don't think they're looking at only the final day here. They do talk about
now listen
February
carefully.
the 10th. They do talk about other instances.
Yeah, but the vast majority is of that final day.
So it changes. Did you see that change? Did you see that change? How quickly that changed? It was it went from they're only looking at the final day to the vast majority of it was looking at the final day. And that's actually a really big difference. Like, that's a really big difference. It might not seem like a big thing, but to convince this audience that they only looked at the last day, the person hangs up takes their headphones off, and that's all they've heard. They've heard the headline, they walk away, and that's now fact to them. Her own producer says, well, hang on, they looked at this day and they looked at this day. And then the response is, yeah, but the vast amount of it was the last day. Now, before you jump in, Chewy, I'll show you, we've experienced this before, okay? We've experienced this before and I think I sent this out as a tweet where Chantelle changed her story 4 times in 53 seconds, right? She makes a statement. I then want to test that statement. It then changes, it then changes, it then changes, all in the space of 60 seconds. And you'll see how this tactic works. Now, again, I don't know whether this is a tactic that she knows that what she's doing or how to do it. But what she does is she says something, and if she gets pushback, she changes it by 5%. Then she changes it by 5%. Then she changes it by 5%. Now, I'm assuming what that means is if she can get the big statement through at the start with no pushback, then that's truth. If she can't, it can be watered down to then being something still bad, but not quite as bad. Have a listen to what's said in this. Look at that sexy bitch there. The one on the blue hat, I mean.
I mean, people now are saying that it's violent speech to disagree with vaccinations. And I mean, that to me is absolutely insane.
Who's saying that?
That's some of the rhetoric coming out of American, like CNN and the BBC, things like that. And so there's a rhetoric there coming out saying that if you disagree with vaccinations, it's very harmful to even have a voice. I've been called...
Hang on, because you just said 2 different things. The first thing you said, it's violence to disagree, and then you said it's harmful to disagree. Like I'm just so you know, I'm a huge believer in show me what you're talking about. Like I won't accept people saying, well, I heard this and I saw this and I think that. I'm like, okay, that's an opinion and that's fine. But if you're making a claim that can be tested, I want to test it. And you've just made a claim, which there is rhetoric coming in.
I will literally go and find right now
totally.
where they've said that disinformation is is violent, because they say
disinformation is violence. That's the third claim.
So I can.
Well, you've just said something different again. Then you've just said disinformation is violence, whereas previously you said, anti-vaxxing is violence.
Let me explain how my mind handles these things. Yeah. So what they're saying is disinformation around the vaccine is violent. Okay. Like that's what they've been saying. Claim. So let me find it for you.
And do you see over on the side of this there's a private chat? Can you see on the side of this platform? You can put the link in there. I can bring it up. So I'm inviting her to give us information. I'm not trying to shut it down. Genuinely, we actually look at the data and we go there. And I don't say this. And then the last part of the conversation is what we ended up on is something very, very different from any of those claims, which was misinformation is inciting violence. So that was the end. Now she did say. And I do wonder,
This isn't the exact story I was talking about, though.
This isn't the exact story I was talking about. So I do wonder why it was showing it. But this isn't the exact story that she was quoting. She never sent me that story. I never got that quote. The only evidence that was put in front of us by her, this is her evidence, is that misinformation is causing violence. And I agree with that, and we both agreed with that. So she went from a statement to another statement to another statement to another statement to what the actual story was, right? And it's just a goalpost move, goalpost move, goalpost move, goalpost move, goalpost move will settle on this. And if people don't push back, then what happens is the first statement becomes truth. If someone takes their headphones off, the first statement is what they hear, and then that's truth, and that is going on Uncle Bob's Facebook page, Joey.
Pat. You forget.
What?
It's the vibe of the thing. Don't make me scramble through my chaotic bookmarking of random websites to back up my point. Because you see, if I have to do that, you'll see that I've only read half of them. And I can't defend my position at all.
I'd be really honest. And look, I'm not one of the marginalized people that are getting impacted massively by this kind of alt-right talking points and this information. So maybe it's unfair of me to say this, but there's an element of me that kind of feels bad for Chantelle, because I do feel like, I mean, this is just my opinion now. I could be wrong. She could be a calculated and cold grifter. That could be the case. And if you believe that, I support you in that belief. My gut is that she's duped into believing these things, and she's now a religious zealot for it, who believes what she's told and now uses motivated cognition and finds the solution that she wants in these things. That's what I think. Now I could be wrong, and I'm not going to die on that hill, but that's what my gut tells me. But doesn't mean that any of the things aren't anywhere near as dangerous as they should be. Yeah, look, Carl, we should make sure we don't ignore the chat altogether. He's using a Gish Gallop, and that's exactly right, Carl. For people who don't know, Gish Gallop, there's a guy called Gish who used to be was a creationist, and he would debate people, and he'd put out 47 points, arbitrary number, in his allotted time for the debate. And then the person who was against him was like, I'll address one of those, uses up all the time addressing one. That means the rest of the facts can stay as truth because they don't get any pushback. One of the things that we now do, and I'm now going to do, is I'm actually happy to talk to these people, but I probably won't talk to them live. Like, I'm happy to have a pre-recorded conversation, because then I can do the research afterwards and check on some of the things they're saying. That's probably what I would do for now. But I don't have a problem talking to them again. I know that's going to annoy some people, because I'm not part of the marginalized group that's really suffering at the hands of any of these perspectives. So I get it. And I apologize to you if you find that to be distasteful of me saying that I talk to these kinds of people, but I will. And one of the reasons I will is so we can do what we're doing right now. Like, if I hadn't talked to Chantelle, we wouldn't have half of this information to show other people what to look out for. So, anything else before we go into the clip number 2?
No, let's crack on.
Clip number 2 is Chantelle has a history of saying she doesn't defend or justify actions or statements, and then she defends and justifies them. So she says this a lot. She's like, I don't defend, violence is never the answer. There's never a reason for violence. And then she'll give all the reasons why there was violence. It's something that she does. Again, I don't know if it's calculated. I don't know if it's planned, but it's something that I've experienced, and I've got an example from my conversation with her, and I heard again on Friday.
You had people at one stage throwing bits of 2x4, and I ran in to try and stop them. And you can say that's incredibly dangerous, right? But you also have to remember that the police all had shields, had gloves, had elbow pads, had knee pads. Like, they were fully padded up. They had big shields, had big helmets. They had the whole lot. And I'm not justifying anyone throwing anything ever, because I think that's really wrong, and I completely disagree with that. But in terms of deadly force, no, because you have to keep in mind they were also throwing them from miles away from any of the officers. So they'd lost kind of all velocity by the time they got to them. They talk about the paving bricks, and I'm sure that would have been scary. But then the police started throwing them back at protesters, giving them back the ammunition. And also the protesters had no kind of padding, didn't have helmets. So in terms of deadly force, that was a lot more deadly towards the protesters than anything that the protesters could achieve back to the police's side.
So let's go through what she said, right? The police had, these are quotes, I've just quoted these out, these are Chantel's words. The police all had shields and gloves and elbow pads, had knees, they were fully padded up, they had big shields, they had big helmets, they had the whole lot, right? Now, this is an opinion part now. Mm-hmm. Chewy, you can tell me if you disagree. In the chat, tell me if you disagree. That sounds like someone saying, so they were fine.
Yeah.
In other words, it didn't matter if things were thrown at them. They were fine.
It's also incorrect. I watched this whole thing, buddy, live, and the first wave of cops had shields. But some of them didn't even have helmets on when they were getting pavers and furniture thrown at them. That was scary. And even if you're wearing that sort of padding, all it has to do is hit you from a direction that you're not expecting, or a gap in your padding, and you're going to hospital. So she's full of shit.
So other comments where the protesters were throwing pieces of 2x4 from miles away. They had lost all velocity. In other words, doesn't really matter. This wasn't dangerous at all.
Also, to me, not how physics work.
That's also, to me, that seems to be a defense for what? Maybe not a defense, but a reason to minimize. Maybe minimize is better than defense. A minimizing of it. Then the police started throwing the paving bricks back at protesters, giving them more ammunition. So they were saying that's the police's fault that the bricks were being thrown at them, because they were thrown and that might have been scary, but then they threw them back. So what are the protesters? Of course they're going to throw them back again. And the protesters had no kind of padding. In other words, they were the victims here. Now I do have opinion on that. I'll be honest. My opinion is this is all a way of defending or minimizing, for example, what's going on. But the reason I think that is I've seen this before.
And you also have to remember that if people have been mentally tortured for multiple days, at that point, by the time that footage was taken, I think they were at least 2.5 weeks in, of course they're going to react badly. Absolutely. I think if you had gone down to that protest and lived what those people went through for 2.5 weeks, you would react badly as well. So am I saying I condone threats? No, absolutely not.
Well, can I just offer, sorry, when you say basically there's a reason they acted that way, what you're actively doing is condoning it. You're giving them a reason for doing it. So I've seen this songbook before. So that's why I have the opinion that whether it's a planned exercise or not, Shantel has a habit of saying, I don't defend or I don't excuse, whilst giving a bunch of defenses and excuses. That's something that I've seen before. And it's a way that then she can go, but I always say, I don't defend that. I always say no to violence. But there are, in my opinion, some justifications and some defenses for why there was, Chewy.
Yeah, no, we've had a conversation around that, around the statement that violence is always wrong. You know,
which is
sometimes it's not.
Yeah,
you can't stake out a completely pure position and then chip away at it. You know, I just wish you'd go back to selling clothes, man. Like, and I mean, to circle back on something that you said at the start, right? When people say, why don't you just ignore her? You know, the best analogy I've got for that, right, is you could ignore someone shitting in the public swimming pool as well. But I think, I think you'll be fine down your end of the pool, right?
For a while.
For a while. But I guarantee you, someone shits in the public pool, you're going to go up and try and stop them. So one of the things that we want to do here is stop Chantelle shitting at our pool. And we need to put that on a T-shirt.
We need to find a T-shirt maker. All right, clip number 3. Clip number 3 is talking. Now, this is one of the. Now, there has been some opinion so far. Fine. People who are fans of Chantel's who want to have a crack. Fine. Yes, we've offered opinion. I think we've offered well-informed opinion, but we've offered opinion. This is a time where I want to show you what Chantelle said about the report, and then show you the report. So this time I want you to look at what she says about the report and then what the report says. And I'm happy for you to judge for yourself. So here's Chantelle talking about why the Prime Minister would not talk to the protesters.
Because this report talks about how Jacinda Ardern had decided very early on she was not going to talk with any protesters, no matter how small the group was, because earlier in the year people had turned up to events she was talking at and yelled at her, protested against her. So because of these small groups of people that turned up to events, she decided that she wasn't going to talk to any of the tens of thousands of people that turned up during the Parliament protests. So she had decided she wasn't going to talk to anyone, and so therefore the police report says that de-escalation, they said we're going to try to do de-escalation, but around the use of firearms, at one stage they talk about how a managed retreat is not an option, and then they talk about the use of firearms. So they were more happy for it to escalate to a point that firearms could be needed to be used against people than for the Prime Minister to have a conversation with people she didn't want to. And if that's not the epitome of deep-rooted narcissism, I have no idea what is.
I know there are going to be some people, but some people questioning Chantelle talking about what narcissism is. But anyway, yes, Joey?
I 100% believe her that she doesn't know what narcissism is. No, so what's she advocating there for? That the police come out and force the Prime Minister to talk to people that had written "hang 'em high" on the forecourt? This
is where I will now mea culpa a little bit. I said that I've been listening to Chantelle's show. Have I told you how far I got through, Chewy? The 2-hour show?
Well, did you get all the way through, but you passed out and you woke up with blood coming out your nose about halfway through?
What we're listening to tonight is a critique of the first 15 minutes.
Oh, holy shit.
And then I was done.
Oh, God.
And then I was done. And I have spent, like I've done before with these debunking or whatever, hours on this. And this is what a gish gallop is. We don't go past 15 minutes of the 2-hour show with what we're talking about tonight. And that's it.
God.
So let's have a look what was said. This is a quote direct. So this is what Chantelle Baker says, is what the report says on why Jacinda Ardern wouldn't engage with the protesters, right? That's what Chantelle says. She says early in the year, people had turned up to her events she was talking at and yelled at her, protested against her. So because of these small groups of people that turned up to events, she decided that she wasn't going to talk to any of the tens of thousands of people that turned up during the Parliament protesters. So Chewy, how about I ask you, could you please synopsize for me, according to Chantelle, why Jacinda didn't talk to the protesters according to the report? Why?
People were mean to her.
Yeah.
People were mean.
People were a bit shouty and a bit mean to her.
I mean, and some of those appearances, and I'll make the point here that a lot of those appearances were outside schools. There were death threats shouted and just absolutely vile things. But yeah, I think the major part of it is there were death threats. You don't come out and write in big letters, "hang 'em high" on the forecourt.
Well, let's get to that.
To be the point of view that, that'll get them out and we'll start a dialogue.
So, remember, this is not what Chantelle is saying. This is what Chantelle is saying the report says. Be very, very clear there. This is what she's saying is reported in the IPCA report. So let's have a look at the report. Exactly the part that Chantelle was citing as to why the Prime Minister wouldn't engage. I'll read it to you. The Commissioner discussed this request directly with the then Prime Minister as a ministerial briefing on 16th of Feb and asked if she would meet with the protesters. She told us that her inclination was to always meet with people, but in this instance, she had thought carefully about such an option and over a week since 8th of February observed the protesters' actions, signs, bollards and behaviours on Parliament grounds. The then Prime Minister explained that after COVID-19 lockdowns were lifted, certain individuals began following her and protesting protesting as she travelled around the country, and this had become a regular practice. On 2 separate occasions, she had tried to engage with those protesters directly in much smaller numbers in the 2022 protest, but found it impossible to do so because she was shouted down, abused, and had to withdraw in fear of her safety. It goes on. In her view, there were the following considerations against engagement. A sector of the protesters at Parliament were not a new gathering. They had followed her before and raised their issues. Only the size of the protest was different. There was no designated leadership, which made it difficult to engage. The group had violent and threatening elements, witnessed by the bollards, signs, and direct threats to her and politicians in general. She did not want to set a precedence that if protesters occupy Parliament grounds, the Prime Minister would talk to them. That's "we don't negotiate with terrorists" vibe. And finally, all ministers, and indeed all members of Parliament from all parties, agreed that they would not engage directly with protesters. Now, on that point, I'm not 100% clear, because I think it says up here that Seymour did. But I guess other than Seymour, all of the others did. Now, let me go back again. Chantelle said that the report said that she wouldn't meet because basically people had shouted and were mean to her. The report says, this is from the report, these are either direct quotes with the quote marks around them, or they're a synopsis of a bigger point, that the Prime Minister observed the protesters' action signs, bollards and behaviours, that the Prime Minister said certain individuals started following her and protested as she travelled around the country. When the PM did engage, she was, quote, shouted down, abused, and had to withdraw in fear for her safety. There was no designated leadership, which made it difficult to engage. The group had violent and threatening elements. They did not want, and she did not, the Prime Minister did not want to set a precedence that if protesters occupy Parliament grounds, the PM would talk to them. So that's about the office of the PM, not Jacinda. And then also that all ministers and MPs from all parties agreed not to engage. Now, when I read out the actual report, Chewy, does that sound like how Chantelle synopsized it on her broadcast?
Absolutely not, Pat.
That surprises me.
I'm shocked, stunned, flummoxed.
And that brings me to my last point about this part of it. When you hear Chantelle say things like this, so do you, once again, my question was, do you know how it actually works? How some of the newsroom gets that money to do public? Do you know what they have to do? Like newsroom or that kind of entity?
Well, yeah, when I read, as in when it comes to the contract that they've signed to get the funding.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've read the contract.
So I've read the contract. Now, I guess what I'm saying, and I don't know this for fact, is Chantelle reads things and then puts a Chantelle filter on it. Because she said she read this. And what she said is the Prime Minister wouldn't engage because mean people shouting, protesting. Whereas the report says that far differently. So I would suggest that when you hear Chantelle say, yeah, I read the report, that would be taken with more than just a grain of salt, Chewy.
Do you think she reads with her finger?
I'm not going to be mean.
Sounds it out.
I don't feel the need to be mean.
I'm going to be mean. I
you can be mean. It's because you're ginger. It's fire.
It's because I'm full of rage. Yeah. I mean, it's very easy to say I've read the report. I've sat through this whole documentary. I've watched the whole thing. It's you can read every word in something. It doesn't mean you comprehend it. It doesn't mean that you can extrapolate thoughts out of it. That's why the scientific process is so rigorous. You know, it's why journalists have people that will try and tear their projects or their articles apart before they print it, so they don't look like idiots. And yeah, I don't like. She doesn't come from a journalistic background. She's not used to the way that these things work. She does not have someone, like, as much as we might refer to a producer going, actually Chantelle, which is very funny. But the frustrating thing is doing that.
But the frustrating thing, Chewy, is neither do we. And I'm not a journalist, and I've had no journalistic training. Yes, I've worked in news and current affairs, but I'm not a journalist.
Well, I mean, by the same token, though, I go off on a rant and go over the line. You're pretty quick to say, well, actually, and, you know, we've had quite robust discussions off air about certain topics of, you know, do we, don't we? Is this the right angle? That sort of thing. I think that's just intellectual honesty, isn't it? And it's just like it's exactly what we don't want to push a boat out and hold a position that then embarrasses us because we fucked it up.
And remember, as we continue to talk about this for, I think, one more clip.
Your feelings don't really matter right now because we're talking about facts.
So the
irony, about vibes.
The irony is how often that the way it feels come up in that first 15 minutes of 2 hours. I mean, I know that's actually quite poor of me. I should have done the whole thing. But if I don't know the whole thing, guys, we'd be here till 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, or this would be every night this week. And I know either you or I would terminate ourselves at that thing. So we're going to play one more. I think it's only one more clip. For the love of God, please only be one more clip. Let me just have a look. Yeah, I believe it is. There's actually one more clip, but there's some addendums to this clip. So this last clip is, I don't know who her producer is. He's someone who creates content himself. And it's kind of a bit unprofessional me not knowing his name, but I'm sorry, I didn't get it. But I wanted to show one thing. This is maybe more about the ecosystem that they bring when allegations become truth. Yeah. And when something is an allegation, and I can't say to these people, but in this instance, you hear it said as truth. And then what'll happen with that is that'll go out through the airwaves to the people who listen to it, and then that will be truth. So this is a clip at the end. There's also another example here about I don't defend it while she's defending things. That comes up again as well. And yeah, let me just play it, and I might stop this one a bit. I might not play it all the way through. Have a bit of a listen.
Point 112 there, they talk about 8 of the 28 incidents that happened during the event.
Okay, straight away, just so you know, it doesn't say that they happened at the event. These are allegations. So point 112 are allegations. This is what her producer says.
Point 112 there, they talk about 8 of the 28 incidents that happened during the event. The IPCA believed that they didn't necessarily have to talk about these incidences because
not true.
They're ongoing investigations, but they're really
they're ongoing investigations.
Quite horrible examples of police conduct, aren't they?
Yeah, and this is what I find interesting. So if you take out any examples of the police brutality, especially the force of brutality, then you also take out any of the context of the longevity of the protest, then of course you're left with a report that makes it seem glowing in terms of the police behaviour. So that's what I did find really interesting. They've kind of excluded any mass events against the protesters and then made sure that every event against a police officer was exemplified. And in here, it's interesting.
I'm just going to pause it there. It doesn't say that everything that the police did was exemplified. In fact, it says very clearly, I've got the report here from RNZ, the IPCA concluded that there were some isolated incidents of potentially excessive force by officers, which were being investigated separately. So it literally does not say that everything that the police officers did were exemplified, but that fits with Chantelle's narrative. So that's what she's now said to her audience.
Because it does say on the final day, there was not one police officer that was hospitalised. So, and I'm not saying that that's a justification for use of force, because I think that's, basing any violence on if people are in hospital or not is not wonderful. But I am saying that a cut on the head or the hand is very, very different to being hospitalised, and a number of the protesters were hospitalised. So you've got to look at this in a little bit of context as well. They're saying they're scared for their lives, yet protesters had much more reason to be scared for theirs.
So a justification again for why the protesters were violent. Now, you know us, and we did this with Pauzi Parker. I'm going to show you a clip shortly, and I'm quite uncomfortable with what I see from the police in that clip because I don't like violence in general. But the question is the IPCA and the courts, I guess, will decide whether it was justifiable violence. So no one's suggesting that there wasn't violence on both sides, but it seems that what Chantelle's doing is saying that the police were the worst and the protesters were the victims. Whereas what I would say is that I saw violence on both sides, and the IPCA has. This is the other thing. These 8 incidents, and I'm about to show you the report again, are ongoing investigations. So these people are complaining that they haven't had a conclusion for ongoing investigations yet, rather than going, we're going to have to wait to find out what happens with those ongoing investigations. So this is not good enough of a result for them. I mean, I guess the IPCA could have held on to the report until they finished everything, but that doesn't mean that these incidences are going to go give the police a pass. It means that they're still looking at them. Do you want to do anything, Chewy, before I play you the last little bit?
No, go for it.
Okay, so this is now her producer again talking about number 112. Okay, so let's have a listen.
Yeah, and some of these points that I'm looking at here in point 112.
Now remember, these are alleged, But you have a listen now to how these are now facts that happen. This is the point I was going to make with this clip. The things that are alleged, and remember very carefully.
Your feelings don't really matter right now because we're talking about facts.
The facts here are these are allegations, right? But have a listen to how it's spun.
Here in point 112, punched an elderly man in the face who was attempting to protect another protester from them. Eye gouged a man. I'll come back to that in a moment.
So will we.
Grabbed a man seated on a bollard and pulled him to the ground by the neck. Fractured a woman's sternum while she was standing in front of the police skirmish line. Placed a man in a headlock and dragged him along the ground by his neck and ear. Struck a woman in the face with a shield, breaking several of her teeth. And I just want to go back to that line. Eye gouged a man. One compound word and two normal words to describe one of the most horrific things I've ever seen happen. And it was all filmed by the media. It was on television. And yet this is the extent that they're going to talk about it. That was extreme police misconduct at the high end.
No, this is not the extent that they're going to talk about it, because they've already said those investigations are ongoing. Now, just look, and Chewy, as you've just said, we will pull each other up. Did he say all of that as factual, that it happened at the, is that how that came across? Because to me, it came across that the producer was saying this all happened at the thing, whereas the report says these are allegations. How did you hear that? Just before I go on, how did you hear that?
I heard it being a very concrete statement and all run together to make it seem like a veritable orgy of violence.
Yep. Okay, good. I mean, I was supposed to say good. I don't mean good, but, you know, that's how I heard it too. So here's at point 112. Now, he listed out the points, and the points are all definitely there, okay? But I just want to say again, he said it as fact, and these are the 8 of the 28 incidents. The individual involved in the incident complained directly to the authority, right? So for the 8 of these, right, so in other words, the other 20 of them might have been people who weren't involved, like the naked woman we talked about last week. Complain directly to the authority. The authority has investigated these methods, and the outcomes will be reported to each complainant once they are concluded. These incidents involve police who allegedly, and then it goes through the list of things. And look, I mean, that picture right there doesn't look great. Doesn't look great. It's the accusation,
common tactic, and I hate it.
Yeah, it doesn't look great. I'm not saying that looks okay, but what I'm saying is we want to be factual and accurate. These are allegations, right? That there was an elderly man punched in the face. So the person who was punched in the face is the person who's complained. The police at Conduct Authority go back to that person with the result before they're released. Yet Chantelle and her producer are complaining that they haven't come out yet. Grabbed a man off the seat, etc. Fractured a woman's sternum. Placed a man in a headlock and dragged him along. Now, all of these things sound horrific. And if they have happened, and if the police have stepped over the line, then there should be consequences. 100% there should be consequences. But at the moment, there are allegations that group that we just heard, the producer and Chantelle, have sold as fact. Now, I want to have a look at this one. Eye gouging of a man. Because that sounds horrific. If you watch rugby in the 80s and you know the name Richard Lowe, you know how bad that can actually be. So I want to show you
Game of Thrones.
I want to show you, yeah, true. I want to show you the incident. In the center of the screen, the gentleman in the cap there is the person who allegedly is eye gouged. I'm just going to show you the footage first, and then I'll tell you what I found. We're in the cap in the center here, man in the center, and the police go, and I'm really uncomfortable with this. Don't like this violence. Right, and that's the end of it. Okay, that's the end of what's just happened. Okay, and then we see it again. Cap in the middle, there he is over there. Cap, police officers, has his hand up at his face, no question. There's a couple of hits, uncomfortable about that. Watch, the hand goes up to the face. There, and then hands behind the head from there on in, pulling him out. So that's the eye gouging conversation. Now, what I've actually done is I've gone through frame by frame, and I don't think I'll play this because it's 2.5 minutes altogether. But I've gone through, in fact, maybe I can mute it and maybe do it myself. I've gone through frame by frame, and I've actually had a look at what happened to the person frame by frame. And you can actually see, because I've got a timer on it here so I can show you, that the hand's on the face, right? And it stays up on the face. And it stays, you can see the fingers are above the eye and the thumb is under the hand. So there's no eye gouging there, right? And over the next kind of 3 or 4 seconds, the hand moves up and down and drops off. And there is a point where he's holding his face like that. And the thumb is definitely up. How would I do it? On the eye like that. Make the accusation. You can see there's no thumb yet. The thumb's under the thing. So he's holding like this. or under the chin is what he's doing at the moment. There's no thumb up near the eye. See the fingers are above the eye there, right? And are above the eye, so they're not in the eye there. I've got a commentary of this, but it's really bad, so I'm not going to play it because I recorded myself doing a commentary to it. And then the hand falls off the face, thumbs over to the side there, so there's no eye gouge there. Eye gouge is with the thumb, right? Without question, that's where it is. Hands on the face, fingers are above the eye there, thumbs over to the side, thumbs over across the nose, up on the forehead as well here. And this goes on until eventually the thumb gets above the eye. See that's where his eye is here. It's right underneath the palm of the hand. No eye gouge there. There is a point where if you want to make the accusation that there could be an eye gouge, you can make that accusation. That's what's going to be investigated. There's two things I want to say about that. Come on, little video. And then the hand slips off the face. Then the hand goes back up on the face, and you can see that the thumb is around the eye and the fingers are around the eye, but they're definitely not in the eye until I think it's 5:22. So you watch the thumb here is under the nose. It's under the nose. It's to the left of the eye. Under the eye, there's the eye there. It's back under the nose. It goes up again towards the eye in a second. There you go. It's up above the eye, but there's the eyebrow. So there's no thumb in the eye. That's up kind of to the base of the eye. Now it gets up to the side of the eye. There's the eyebrow. And then it goes on top of the eye. Now it's above the eye, but then it comes back down and it is on top of the eye without question. Right. At 5 seconds and 22/100ths of a second, the thumb is over the eye. Now, is that an eye gouge or not? I don't know. But no question that 5 seconds in and 22/100ths of a second of my video, the thumb goes in front of the eye. That's pretty clear. No question. And then by the time it gets to 5:28, 6/100ths of a second later, it's all finished. So the first thing is, and this is not to minimize, the first thing is if there was an eye gouge, it's 6/100ths of a second. You've just seen it. I just showed it to you. I showed you all the footage. I went through the whole thing bit by bit. But the second thing I want to say to you is the producer, and this is the exaggeration, and this is the amplification of issues, right? They make it seem more important than it is. 6/100ths of a second of a potential eye gouge, push in the eye, slip, whatever. The announcer or the producer described as, quote, one of the most horrific things I've ever seen. That's how that incident was described by the producer as one of the most horrific things I've ever seen. The producer then went on to say it is, quote, extreme police misconduct or conduct at the high end. So the exaggeration. So this person says that what they've just seen, I follow an Instagram account called Nature is Metal, and there's worse things on that every single day. I'm not actually defending either what the police are doing, and people are going to now accuse me of doing what I say Chantelle does, because I'm saying if that's an eye gouge, there needs to be some kind of circumstances for it. But to describe a potentially 6/100ths of a second contact with the eye of the thumb as one of the most horrific things I have ever seen, I have to honestly say you must have had a very sheltered life. Chewy.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I want to say there. Look, I could, at full speed, you can see what their objective was. The police were trying to get the man in the hat and pull him out of the line over behind the police lines. Now, we don't see what he did to attract that sort of attention or what the objective was. It was, in my opinion, pretty much because he jammed up between those portable toilets and the police line, and they're trying to move the police line forward. The objective there, that the policeman was trying to reach behind his head and grab his head and pull him over, as they eventually do. But when you've got a police line jostling and protesters jostling and moving, that move to grab the head position moves, the police officer moves, and the hand brushes up round to get behind him. That's how I see it.
Let me say this about, because someone in the chat says, and I didn't have this before, and I'm happy to put it up now, because it looks his face doesn't look great. This is the protester, right? And he's got a swollen eye. Now, there is no question. That's why I said I'm not comfortable with the violence that I saw. There was punches and hits to the face. I 100% agree that that has happened. But the question is if it was an eye gouge or not. And look, I'm not actually saying it wasn't an eye gouge. Well, the two things I'm saying is there was certainly a lot of that 2 or 3 second incident that wasn't eye gouging. And there was possibly 6/100ths of a second that could have been. And it's been described by the producer of Chantelle's show as one of the most horrific things I have ever seen. Now that looks terrible. I'm genuinely sorry for the man. That's not a good look. I mean, for him, it's bad. And you'll notice if we watch that video again, is that I'll just turn the volume off. There is definitely a hit. There are hits. There's hits to the faces. Look, there's a punch. It's not. I
think that first impact would have generated that guy.
I don't know. I don't know. But all I guess I'm saying is, nobody does at the moment. It's an allegation. Yep. And that's one of the other points about
black eyes always look horrific. Like I've got a black eye that looked like that from a mosh pit, and I had a great time. I'm not suggesting that he had a great time, but it is very easy to get a very dramatic looking black eye.
And let's not say that meaning we're minimizing it, because we're not.
No, not at all.
Look, no one, unless you're a lurker and you're coming in for the first night and you want to have a crack, more power to you.
And there are a few.
More power to you. But if you're anyone who's watched us more long term, you'll know we called out the violence at the Posey Parker conversation. Like we called it out and said not appropriate. And we're calling. I'm uncomfortable with seeing the police act that way. Does that mean it was wrong? Well, that's what the IPCA and the courts decide, right? I'm uncomfortable with it. I don't like violence, but I'm not also naive enough to go, violence is never the answer. Because sometimes it is. And we'll say it again. If your partner, if you're a guy, a big burly guy, and your little girlfriend was being beaten up by someone in the street, you would throw hands. You wouldn't go, oh, look, sorry, sweetheart, but violence is never the answer. Look after yourself. Normally when I say that, people are like, yeah, but that's in self-defense. Yeah, but it's still what violence is. So we don't play the game of going violence is never the answer, right? But I also don't want to play the game of going, what's been described as one of the most horrific things I've ever seen was necessarily one of the most horrific things that have ever been done.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'm certainly no police apologist. You know, police go over the line a lot of the time, but this is such a dynamic thing, and we're looking at it. You know, and this is what the IPCA do. They look at things under a microscope, and it has to be defended in court, and the courts go through it, and like. When it comes to this level of thing, it's not the vibe of the thing. There are so many people looking at it and black hatting it. And well, what about this angle? And what about this? And how could we have operationally dealt with this differently? You know, whenever there's an event like this, you go back, you review. And there are some people that are doing that from a position of intellectual honesty. And there are many out there that go, that justifies my point of view, and I'm sticking to it. I'm going to stick my flag in it, and I'm going to hang everything over this. I can see it happening in the chat now. Yeah. Sometimes you've got to step back from the position that you want and just black hat it. Yeah. And I don't think you can watch that video. You can do both things. You can watch that video and go, I don't like that. I don't like how it looks. I'm angry that it went that way. And then there's a point of going and seeing what Chantelle and co are saying and go, well, I don't know, man, that's a bit of a long draw.
Yeah. Yeah, or even, I mean, like, we can even say, and look, we've got Planner Walk in the chat. We'll go over chat with Planner Walk in a sec before we go on to the last part of the show. And even if we say exaggeration, you know, or even if we say absolutism when there's still allegations, there's just the way it's delivered and the way that it comes out is really, I think, really harmful to, you said intellectually honest. And let's be honest, there are people on the police side who also won't be being intellectually honest. There could be cover-ups. There could be that. I completely acknowledge that. But the way you find that out is you get to the end of the process and then reassess. And we're mid-process, and the police IPCA are going to report to the people who made the complaints first. It's not like oh my God, they're letting them off. Welcome back. Hope you're enjoying Big Hero News, the summer sessions, and the interview that just played. I want to say very big thanks, a very, very big thanks to all our lovely patrons, especially during this time where we are away on holiday and we're not doing the same amount of work to generate income. You all know that income for BHN is pretty small in generally, but these lovely people who are on board at the moment as our patrons, we appreciate you very, very much. If you have become a patron during the summer period, you probably won't see your name on the billboard because this was at the time of recording what we had. All those lovely people who are part of our Coffee Run of Fuel patron level, and also the people who are executive producers, senior producers, and super patrons. If you're interested in being involved with what we do, then all you need to do is head to patreon.com/BH Big Hero News. I need to get my address right. Patreon.com/Big Hero News to be a part of the team, to be a part of what we do. 2024, we're going to focus in a new and different and fairer way on those lovely people who become part of our patrons. So there'll be more on the table over the forthcoming year for you guys being patrons on board than there has been in the past. I know you just got on board because you love what we do and you want to support us, which we appreciate greatly. But 2024, there will be more of a focus on actually providing patrons unique opportunities beyond what we're currently doing as well. So it's patreon.com/Big Hairy News. If you want to be a part of what we do, then we would love to have you on board. And thanks to all of those people who are currently patrons. We love you to bits and we genuinely appreciate what you do. Right, let's keep going. This is Big Hairy News. This is the summer series. Let's keep trucking because we've started talking about this. So let's get the factoids and the figurinos around this National Party announcement today.
Well, campaign promises are coming thick and fast now. National Today made a play for the student vote by changing KiwiSaver rules so it can be...
I mean, the student vote? Really? For the student vote?
Apparently, Young National have been telling Chris Bishop that it's a priority for them. I do not believe.
Meanwhile, the Greens are promising a plan to give all stolen land back to Māori. Here's political reporter.
That's another thing we're not talking about tonight. Maybe tomorrow.
Scraping together the savings for a rental bond can be a struggle for some students. And now the Nats are looking for their vote.
We're going to let people aged under 30 use their KiwiSaver balance to pay for their bond for accommodation.
The median rent for a three-bedroom house is $775 a week. The maximum bond a landlord can charge is 4 weeks, so the bond would be $3,100.
Yeah, but split amongst 14 people who live in the Castle Street flat, though. So, but anyway,
a common sense law change that we think will make it a bit easier for young people in particular to get together the quite large amounts of cash that young people struggle with.
While there would be a 5-year cap on the scheme, KiwiSavers borrowing from their investments would be worse off because of compounding interest.
Of course.
With, say, a 6% interest rate over that 5 years, that $3,000 would have grown to more than $4,000. So that person could have lost more than $1,000 worth of interest.
They will lose that while it's out of their KiwiSaver, that's true.
It's just another example of the National Party raiding KiwiSaver all of the time.
It's not mandatory, it's an option. But they're going to make a difference for some young people and some people will choose to take it up.
Politicians flood back here to Parliament this week for the final stretch before the election, and the policies are starting to fly thick and fast. As well as the National Party's KiwiSaver bond borrow, the Greens today promised tangata whenua to give their stolen land back. They'd do that by repealing the deadline for treaty claims and investigating the extent to which land was taken from Māori.
New Zealanders understand what fairness is. New Zealanders understand that when something is taken, there needs to be redress. New Zealanders understand that when injustice has happened, there needs to be restoration.
And as private land, which was originally taken from tangata whenua, comes up for sale, it would first be offered to iwi and hapu. If they want it, the Crown would then negotiate to buy it.
What we are not setting out to do is create further injustice and breaches the way that Māori have been subjected to for 180 years.
The treaty settlement process is a full and final settlement process, and I have no intention of reopening that.
But the Greens say it's a priority for coalition talks.
Hashtag land back.
Arguing you can't do tangata whenua without the whenua. Amelia Wade, News Hub.
All right, again, busy night. Don't have much information on that. Welcome to can we stop with the dog porn, please? It's not fair. People are just, you're already bloody the team favourite, Chill. You don't need to bring the dog in just to make it even better. Anyway, we can talk a bit about that. I'd rather deep dive into that Greens policy though, and actually have a proper good look at it because it sounds really interesting. So let's look at the rental one. So this is what I see the National Party doing. What they're doing is they're saying there's a real problem with housing. We are the party of solutions. We are the party that are going to bring solutions when a Labour Party didn't. What we're going to do is to solve the rental property issue by raiding your KiwiSaver and having you worse off at the end of the 5-year period than you were. In other words, the problem is the housing market and the cost of rentals. The solution would be to sort that out, but they're not. They're actually just finding another way to get there, and I'm using emotive words on purpose, and to have their rich landlord mates, and I know not all landlords are rich landlord mates, but their rich landlord mates getting more money from the poor students or poor people under 20 who can't afford. Remember, it's only the people who can't afford a bond already, so it's likely going to be lower socioeconomic people. So your retirement savings is now going into the pockets of your landlord. Yes, I know you get your bond back. I know it's not in their literal pockets, but it enables them to get into the house.
Do you get your bond back?
Sure. It just seems to be incredibly short-sighted from the party of solutions, Chewy.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had to clean the carpets after you left. It cost $700.
Yeah, true.
And you know, you didn't clean the shower, so I had to get a cleaner in to do that. That's $300. Bam! I've kept all of it. I'm a clever landlord. You know, it's just bullshit. Just the assumption that you can just recycle your bond into your next place and you'll get it back eventually. Bullshit. It'll get whittled away on your 12-month contracts as every landlord sticks his hand out and goes, oh, now I know I can ask for 4 weeks bond because they can all get it out of their KiwiSaver.
Yeah, true. I can up the bond.
Bullshit. It's not coming from you know, the young gnats. None of those guys will need to raid their KiwiSaver. Those are the guys that go to university and their parents buy a flat because their kid's going off to study to be a lawyer in Otago, and it's easier to buy a flat than for him to rent.
The bank of mum and dad, as Steph says.
Absolutely. It's a shit policy. But again, I think it illustrates a point that National's ideas cupboard is fucking empty.
Yeah, and I just can't get over, like, I don't have a problem, like, because you can raid your KiwiSaver for other stuff, like buying a house, right? Like as a part of deposit for a house, getting an asset. But it's always like this conversation I've had for 20 years about asset sales. I'm not anti-asset sales. It depends what the assets are being sold for. The last time this was put on the chopping board in a big way, they said it was to fix up classrooms and hospitals. And my position was, well, that's a stupid thing to sell assets for, because what happens in 20 years' time when they need to be done again, you don't have the asset. That's the thing you borrow for. So I wasn't for asset sales for that thing. So I don't have a problem with the idea of borrowing or taking out of your KiwiSaver, but it depends what for. And for a bond is utter lunacy, especially when, as we've just seen on the news, average bond, lose $1,000, people are worse off. They've got a flat, but financially they're worse off after that time. And this is again from the party who claims to have all the answers and from the party who says they're more fiscally responsible. It needs to be called out for what it is. Utter horseshit. This isn't even populist, because I guarantee it won't be very popular, Chewy.
No. I think they might as well just be honest about it and go, we're letting the under 30s raid their KiwiSaver because we all know that none of them are living to 65 or 75 or 80 if we get our way.
Got my dog.
That's a dog on a cup. It's not the same. You've got your own dog. You've got your own real dog.
She's not down here. She's upstairs playing with the kids. It's not fair. I go to the bottom of the list when they're here. So anyway, utterly horseshit, terrible policy, not clever, not inspiring, won't get them any votes. So one has to wonder why. I mean, I don't want to be too much of a pessimist, but at this time of the cycle, we're seeing policies by all political parties to help them get votes. Who is this going to attract? Like, who is this going to go, oh, yeah, I've been really thinking over where I should put my vote, but I think definitely now I'm going to vote for Labour, because now I can raid my KiwiSaver for a $220 bond as 1/4 of this flat in Palmerston North. Makes no sense whatsoever.